Hello, and welcome to today's webinar part 2 of Wire and Cable Industry, Operational Best Practices, COVID-19. My name is Jan Soritz. I am the president of Incotech Inc. and the 2020 WAI president. I will be your moderator for today's program. This program will be recorded and will be available within a few days on the WAI's archive and on your YouTube. If you miss any part of the presentation or want to forward it to another person, just check your email for an update on its release. It's my pleasure to introduce today's panel. Tom Heberling is Vice President, Cable and Wire Manufacturing at Southwire. Tom has worked at the Southwire for nearly 33 years. He began his career as a cooperative education student while he attended Auburn University, where he earned a bachelor's degree in industrial engineering. Tom has been an active WAI member and is currently serving as the first vice president on the association executive committee. He is also a member of the association nomination and exhibition planning committee. In 2017, Tom received WAI's President Award for his lasting contribution to the association and the industry for his work on the Member Relations Committee. Second, Andy Talbot is Vice President and General Manager of Mid-South Wire Company in Nashville, Tennessee. He is a 30-year-plus veteran in the ferrous wire industry. Prior to joining Mid-South Wire in 1999, he served as plant manager at the Medtronic Steel and Wire plant, and he held the position of plant engineer for Elco Industries and Anchor Wire Division. He worked for several years as an independent wire processing consultant, traveled to Russia, China, Peru, and various parts of Europe and the US. Andy serves on the WAI's board of directors and was president of the organization in 2016. He is also the 2020 Donatello Memorial Award recipient. And third, we have Robert Wild, who is president and CEO of Niehoff Endex North America. He joined Maschinenfabrik Niehoff in Schwarzbach, Germany in 1990 as a postgraduate leadership trainee, where he rotated through all the departments for a period of 3 years. In October 1993, he became assistant sales manager and was promoted to area sales manager in 1999, responsible for France, Morocco, Tunisia, Algeria, and South Africa, amongst other countries. 5 years later, he relocated to the US, where he served as executive vice president and VP of sales for the company's operation in Swedesboro, New Jersey, and was later promoted to his current role. He holds a master's degree in mechanical engineering from the Technical University of Munich. First, I'll start with Tom Heberling, and then Andy Talbot, and then Robert Wild. I'd like to ask you to set the table by sharing a general overview of your organization. And Tom, please start this one.
Sure, Jan. Good morning to everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning. Southwire was founded in 1950, recently celebrated our 70th anniversary. We're headquartered in Carrollton, Georgia, approximately 40 miles west of Atlanta off of I-20. Southwire has nearly 8,000 employees and serves the markets of wire and cable along with tools and assembled products, with emphasis here in North America. Again, thanks for participating in today's webinar.
And Andy?
Yes, my name is Andy Talbot with Mid-South Wire Company. As John said, I've been with Mid-South for over 20 years, been in the wire industry for well over 30 years. Mid-South is a privately held company celebrating over 50 years of operations in Nashville, Tennessee, and we also have a plant in Scott City, Missouri. We have production capacity of approximately 230,000 tons of net tons of rod and wire per year. We produce low carbon, high carbon, bright basic steel wire as well as plating quality. And we also produce galvanized wire in industrial quality and heavy coated galvanized heavy zinc coatings. We also produce construction welded wire mesh. We have a separate trucking company called MS Logistics with approximately 100 over the road trucks. And we also manage barge and rail unloading terminal for our own use and for the use of our other customers.
Thank you, Andy and Robert.
Thanks, Andy. Now it's my pleasure to introduce Niehoff to the one or the other listener who may not yet know us. We are 1 year younger than Southwire, so we will celebrate our 70th anniversary next year. Niehoff, major manufacturer for equipment for the non-ferrous wire and cable industry. Like example, wire drawing machines, annealing, spooling, winding, galvanic electroblading, punching, stranding, plus equipment for braiding, including rewinding. Most of our machines are used to process air, non-ferrous wire. Some of our machines are used for insulated wire. Being a family-founded business, the founder, Walter Niehoff, had very early already the vision that he has to go global with this company. Totally out of today's 900 employees, more than 400 live and work outside Germany, tendencies growing. Niehoff Endex is based in South Jersey with 34 employees. Our biggest subsidiary by headcount is, of course, the headquarters with 500, and followed at the of Niehoff of India with 120. Being a global company and COVID-19 being a global pandemic, COVID affected all sister companies, which we will later address. Back to you, Jan.
Thank you to all of you. And as we are doing here today, it is current best practices of your organization regarding COVID-19. So I will start up by asking Tom, how have your day-to-day manufacturing processes changed because of the pandemic?
We as a company felt like we needed some guiding principles. So what's changed? It's not necessarily changed, but it's an additional emphasis. So you can see the first one there, lead with empathy. It's important during this time. You know, we've made an investment in our human capital, and so we are sensitive to making sure they're protected, the human capital is protected, and important that we understand what a typical day is for each individual employee so we can help support them. Also, communication in real time. We have a regular cadence twice a day with the leadership throughout North America to make sure that we're in sync with one another. And then sensitive to making decisions in real time. I call it avoid paralysis by analysis. So again, lead with empathy, communicate in real time, decision-making in real time, and then being sensitive to giving back to local communities. We already do this, but our challenges is where can Southwire help? What's our lane in the community in which we're located to help make a positive difference during this time? So those are principles that we already have, but now it's taken a new higher definition as far as our current state that we're working through.
So how has those procedures that you are working with and have been functioning in your plan? Do you have to have made adjustment along the way?
Sure. Absolutely. We've made various adjustments. Just coming to work every day, we have a protocol related to the prevention of the COVID-19. So we have temperature checks at the beginning of the shift. We have emphasis on social distancing. We're intentional about cleaning of the work areas, making hand sanitizer available to all the employees. and essentially just working to educate our workforce to be intentional in our messaging and then avoid complacency on following our protocol. So those are changes. Those are changes, including our absenteeism policy, where we've elected to reevaluate and create some flexibility for our employees by modifying our attendance policy.
All right, thank you. And Andy, how has your attendance changed after the COVID-19, and have you had to change any of your company policies?
We've not directly changed any company policies with regard to attendance, except to relax some rules regarding clocking in and clocking out. We quickly realized that having all of our employees congregate in front of the time clock and use a common time clock punch screen was not a good idea in an environment where you're concerned about contagion. So we suspended the need to have our employees clock in, and we turned that over to the management, their department managers, to track their time manually and keep up with it that way. We adjusted some break schedules. We adjusted lunch schedules also to reduce population in those various areas. And with regard to cleaning and breaks, we took extra breaks. We were assigned additional people to the cleaning process to disinfect and clean all common areas, entrances, doorknobs, handles, and we changed our schedule to the extent that business demand affected us initially. But beyond that, we didn't make any significant changes in policy to our attendance.
Okay, and the cleaning, is that something that is done daily?
Yes, we are cleaning continually in all areas of the plant. We have 2 employees that are dedicated on the day shift and also on the second shift. We have management people as well as other custodial people doing cleaning, again, of the break rooms, the common areas where people are. We took suggestions from our employees. We meet with the employees at least once a week at every facility. We have to do that with social distancing in mind, but we do this through the ownership of our company. We believe that the best communications in a time of crisis come from the very top. That's our guiding principle. Necessary to communicate to our employees regularly and to give them the opportunity to voice any concerns that they may have. And one of the concerns that came up immediately was about the common pieces of equipment that they may use, such as keyboards or controls for tensile testing machines. So we responded to that immediately, put cleaning supplies near those pieces of equipment, instructed the employees on how to use them, and also had the cleaning personnel follow up to make sure that that was done in times that the equipment was not being used.
All right. Next question is for you, Robert. What new safety procedures have you added onto your shop floors?
Okay, let me answer this question. First, we are based in New Jersey, and as everybody knows who listens to the news, New Jersey is very hard hit with coronavirus. Today we have approximately 1 death per 1,000 residents, so this is quite a lot. Ultimate non-negotiable goal is, of course, the well-being and the health of our employees, including their families, and of course our customers and vendors. We implemented all the available procedures recommended by CDC and OSHA, in self-distancing, then deep cleaning weekly, cleaning of sensible areas daily. All employees are required to self-monitor and report any changes in condition as per CDC guidance. If someone feels sick, he should stay at home. He will not punish by that. As mentioned, the facility is disinfected daily and weekly a deep cleaning is performed. In the shop, we assemble machinery. We stopped any sharing of tools. We arranged the shop floor so the separation is bigger. So there could be always kept the distance on 6 feet. Already early January, we created a task force because we saw, for example, that our Chinese subsidiary was hit earlier, so we could learn from them. Next in line was Germany, who had been affected by COVID earlier than the United States. So we also negotiated with them what to do and what makes sense, just to have an early warning system. This kind of connecting worldwide was very helpful for us to learn and to share experiences. The biggest, just to look a little bit across the pond, the biggest subsidiary from Niehoff is, of course, the headquarters based in southern Germany. They do since early March. They put everybody in the factory in a 2-shift model. Everybody who could not work from home. That includes offices, shop floor, and everything. And they separated all the people in 2 shifts. They have an early shift and they have a late shift. The early shift goes from 6 to 1:30, and the late shift from 2 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. No matter who you are, manager, in the office, in the shop, we separated them. And then this is shift switch from week to week. The late shift became the early shift, and the early shift became the late shift. This helped to separate because, of course, in a big company, separating crowds or crowd management is very important. The picture in India was quite different to all other group members. All companies, all our 7 manufacturing sites could continue to work. Only one, Niehoff of India, had to stop working due to local regulations in India. But the good news is, since this Monday, they could resume manufacturing in India. Back to you, Jan.
Thank you very much. But during this whole procedure, here, Robert, have you had any difficulties implementing the health and safety measures, the screening or the social distancing with the employees?
Very good. We here in New Jersey, we have the advantage that we are just a smaller organization. Yeah, having 34 employees, you can manage. Yes, you make your procedures, but then you can really go around and explain the procedure to everybody individually. So this worked pretty well. We had very good guidance because COVID affected everybody. The checklist, the guiding documentation is readily available. There was a very good support to come up with the ideas. Of course, some of the ideas we had to adapt and to modify and to adjust. One problem always was we had is a lack of masks, the lack of wipes, and the lack of gloves. So we had to come up with some ideas. Some of the masks we had to manufacture over the weekend at home with our employees. From the management point of view, we had to respect, and we have to respect the different personalities. And quite frankly, many of our employees, or some of our employees, had all kinds of different forms of coronavirus anxiety, which of course everybody can understand. So overall, it worked well. Of course, in the bigger subsidiaries, it was a lot of work, and you had to organize a lot. But everybody understood why we do it, and this is a good thing because everybody really feels anxiety, and so they follow nicely. Thank you.
Thanks. All right, this one here is to you, Tom. Have you had changes in your manufacturing schedule to accommodate the COVID issue?
Yeah, so we, going back to the guiding principle, lead with empathy, protect your human capital. That's an investment you made. So what can we do to help be supportive is our approach. And we wanted to create flexibility for our employees because this is a change that they're having to adjust to. And so therefore we were accommodating with our attendance policy. We wanted to provide, again, flexibility And so that's one example of us changing our day-to-day routine. And we'll continue to adjust as the future unfolds on a needed basis. On a needed basis, we'll adjust. But that's an example, Jan, of us just being sensitive to how can we make this a win-win, because we have a 24/7 operation.
Yeah. Okay. Has the pandemic affected either incoming or outgoing deliveries or availability of your raw material, Tom?
Yeah, for Southwire, it's been a minimum impact. I don't know if Robert or Andy have other feedback, but for the most part, Jan, it's been a minimum impact. We have screening process, a screening protocol on any visitors, and that would include vendors or truck drivers, transportation, and anyone coming on site. There's a screening process that we have those individuals go through prior to actually coming into our site. But we've had very little disruption.
Is that the same with you, Andy and Robert?
Yes, this is Andy. We've had minimal issues with deliveries of critical supplies and steel itself. We have seen some slight delays on our yard as we restricted the access of the truck drivers to our building. We actually put portable toilet, portable restroom facilities outside the building to keep the drivers from having to come into the building, which is the common practice before. That created a couple of bottlenecks, but beyond that, we didn't see any significant delays in deliveries.
From my side, let's say, we work a lot with imported equipment from Germany, so also we have to have a logistic chain with getting spare parts in from Germany, and this was to some extent disrupted because air cargo is really now much more harder to get into the US, and because a lot of flights are canceled. So you have to reroute, you have to be flexible, you have to talk to your freight forwarders to get your logistic going. For the stuff we manufacture here locally, we had not too many problems, so that worked out quite well. Of course, the flow of people is totally interrupted. Let's say people who would come from Germany to support us, to commissioned customers, this is now totally at a full stop.
So to summarize it, you have all three of you have had to put more logistic into it and monitoring it more than you're doing it daily, but it does not have an impact on your business as of receiving and delivering it. You have not have obstacles to that.
That'd be correct.
This is correct. Yeah, we are up and running.
Yeah. Well, this is a question for you, Andy. Has the COVID-19 prompted any changes to the internal communication, daily meeting, and use of visual technology, remote work?
Yes, it made significant changes there. Immediately after realizing that we had to respond to this situation, we put into effect, by the leadership of our company, the list of the people who needed to work remotely. And we had to quickly secure laptops, strengthen our VPN, so the number of employees we could maximize to work remotely. People such as accounting people, we had some support, administrative, remote sales. Each of the employees who were able to work from home and do their jobs from home were immediately dispatched to their home and enabled to work remotely. We converted all meetings in the plant for those who stayed and who had to work on site to either voice or video conference meetings. We suspended all face-to-face meetings in favor of conducting our meetings by the phone, even though we're all basically on the same grounds for the most part. We took extra care with the employees that were here, who had to be here to work, to keep them separated. We did temperature checks and asked 3 important questions of the employees per CDC guidelines with regard to their health and any exposure that they may have had or any symptoms anyone in their family may have had. So we also provided masks, and we, again, I mentioned before that we doubled up our cleaning efforts, and we made sure that any visitors to the plant, such as contractors or routine maintenance or service people, were locked out. Basically, we required everyone to check in because all entrances to the plant were locked with the exception of truck entrances. So anyone who came in had to check in. They had to be temperature checked. They had to answer the questions for the CDC. And then we allowed them to come into the plant and conduct their business using social distancing. We suspended incoming sales calls, and we suspended, and our customers also mutually suspended sales calls by our sales personnel in person. So we spent significant amount of time, first of all, getting the people who could work remotely doing so, and that's worked very seamlessly. And we took steps for those office people who were still working, such as HR, senior accounting, and management department managers. We made sure that those people continued to work in offices that were fairly well segregated away from other offices. We really don't have many cubicle type arrangements or high density office situations. So even though most of us continued to work on site, we were working in offices with doors separated and isolated from others as everyone felt necessary and comfortable.
Okay. Has this brought about any internal complication in delivering of the health-related message to the employees, interruption in the workflow, etc.?
Well, not necessarily. We don't consider it a complication to take the time as needed to communicate, and actually we do this daily with our management team. But the ownership of our company, John T. Johnson Jr., takes a very serious approach to communications with our employees. He communicates weekly, at least, with every employee using social distancing guidelines in as large of groups as possible, and often outdoors, using PA systems so that the employees are not standing close together, but everyone can hear. And we conduct those meetings outside, and we basically do two things. We cover the health aspects of the crisis and the efforts that we're making to mitigate any problems. We also ask for suggestions regarding any concerns that any of the employees have, and we've gotten some very helpful suggestions from our hourly employees and managers as well. And then we also brief them as to what to expect with the business, because as each of us know, business levels have been greatly affected, and they change daily, and work hours have been shifted to not only accommodate social distancing and separation of shifts, but also to accommodate the levels of business that we're having compared to what we enjoyed in the first quarter before this situation developed. But we think that although there may be some minor adjustments and complications, they're very well worth the effort that it takes to do so. And we're thinking that in the future, some of these steps that we have taken will become a little more permanent as this subsides. Obviously, we're going to pay more attention to cleaning, disinfection. We may utilize remote work more to prevent any kind of spread of sickness during the flu season or cold season, or when people have issues with their family. That's a big paradigm shift to work from home, but we're seeing that it is just as productive in most cases as when people are in the office, and they're able to work without taking days off and losing big blocks of time and getting behind in their work. So the complications have been minimal, and they've been very tolerable with regard to their need to communicate what we need to our employees during a time of crisis like this.
Thank you. I think this is an important topic here. So do you have anything to add to this, Tom, or can you just nod that that you at Southwire is doing the same thing?
We are actually, anyone that's not day-to-day in manufacturing, where we're all working from home to June 1st, and then we're looking to phase in as we come back to the office. But there's going to be a new normal, and we recognize that, and we're working to understand that. But we recognize there's a new normal moving forward. The social distancing, as an example, how's that going to impact us moving forward, and how we conduct our meetings and how we our day-to-day business? I have personally found, I've been an advocate of being in the office over my career, even though we were given the flexibility to work from home. I felt it set me up for success better than working from home. What I have found, though, because it's been 6 weeks, it was mid-March when we started working from the home, is just as effective. My being responsible for manufacturing plants, the one item that's voided for myself is visiting the facilities right now and traveling, because I do feel like there's an influence there, being responsible for specific manufacturing plants. As far as working from the office, I think it's been a learning for several of us that, hey, this is pretty effective. I stay on the phone versus being in the conference room, so to speak. So I feel like Southwire has handled it extremely. We've been extremely efficient working from the home. And so, yeah, moving forward, there's going to be some modifications. Just don't know what that future state's going to look like. But respect of the social distancing, though, and that goes back to being complacent. We know we can't be complacent. We got to continue to do what we're doing.
All right. Thank you very much. Question here to you, Robert. Has COVID-19 prompted any changes in the messages your company puts out to the customers, vendors, stakeholders, etc., or the external contact?
Overall, throughout the pandemic, Niehoff continued to operate as normal as possible towards our customers. Of course, everything was a total different way of communication, and of course, because no visits are possible in both ways, we found new ways to communicate. We also updated our business partners and vendors about the current situation and what organization changes we had implemented. Overall, it was communication had been intensified, never interrupted, and this was important to work as normal as possible. The most affected part is, of course, traveling for commissionings, which is now at a full stop, as I mentioned earlier.
So, but what about your factory? Has there been any changes on who can visit and who cannot visit the plants?
Yeah, of course. Only essential visitors are allowed. Most everybody is now shut out, and has to. Trucking, of course, all logistic requirements are fully functioning. The logistic in between our companies and the logistic to customer and the logistic to from vendors. But other than this, all non-essential visits are just not taking place. It is a very strict regulation, like for sure it's like at Southwire and at Andy's place. So this is pretty different. But everybody understands this, so there's also no acceptance problem.
As most of us, we probably sitting here wondering how is that looking ahead from here? What is the time coming up show us, and how will we be left? So, question to you, all three of you, can you tell the audience how you are preparing for this for now, in the short term, and for future? How are you going to be dealing with this here? And I'll start with you, Tom.
Number one is we don't know what we don't know, right? None of us do. And so the way we are preparing is we recognize that number one, we have to be nimble. We have to be able to adjust in real time. And so, number one, we recognize that. And the second item moving forward, as we continue to educate ourselves, and number two is to further not only educate ourselves, but also educate our workforce. And I align it with safety. You know, we as a company have been on a safety journey, and our incident rate as a company is less than 1% now. Had you told me that 10 years ago that we would have an incident rate under 1%, I would have scratched my head. And so it's been a learning process, educating of our entire, all of our employee base. And I see the same thing here so we got to be nimble, react quick, just in real time. But then we also have to continue to educate ourselves and continue to educate our workforce. And avoid the complacency piece is you get into the new normal, you get comfortable, and that's what we got to guard against as a company, is continually challenging ourselves, being intentional, not to be complacent. So, you know, the protocol that we have in place right now, whether it's the communication or some of the checks, like the temperature checks and social distancing sensitivity, you know, we'll continue those. And, you know, we'll adjust as needed. Going back to, we don't know what we don't know at this point. So hopefully that helps answer that short term, long term. It's forever adjustment right now.
Yeah, that's correct. But we are also seeing here that several states are starting to open up, and it's been debated whether this is too early. But we here in Ohio, we have opened up for offices. So what are you seeing there, Andy? Can you add anything on to what you're saying?
Well, we're basically following the guidelines of the state of Tennessee. And we see, being an essential business, of course, our operation conditions are different from non-essential businesses such as restaurants, bars, and certain retail establishments. But for the most part, we're leaning on what we hear from the state and local authorities and also the federal authorities. We are seeing slowly in different states some of our customers returning back to business, particularly those in the automotive sector, which has been hit very hard, and certain retail sectors have been hit very hard. But going forward, we're going to come up with some new policies. We've already started adopting some things that we feel will become more permanent, especially in the areas of expanding our current hygiene and sanitation efforts, and also without being overly invasive, being more attentive to our fellow employees' health conditions. If we see someone struggling with an illness or something that could be contagious, to check and see if they need to work from home or take a different approach rather than spreading something in the facility. I think that's something all of us will be more cognizant of going forward. But as we see Tennessee opening up and coming back, I think we've all enjoyed the commute to work. Normally it takes me almost an hour to get to work. Under these conditions, it's taken about 23 minutes, so that's been nice. But I'm encouraged every day that the traffic gets a little heavier, that people are coming back to work. We're going to see a resurgence in our economy to some extent, probably take most of the rest of the year. But I think overall business, the health authorities and the governments at every level in the U.S., I can't speak to the international side, but I think they've handled this as effectively and as efficiently as could be expected for as suddenly as it came upon us. So we're going to continue to pay a lot of attention to their guidelines going forward and being sure that we understand that we're not taking any unnecessary risks as we return back to normal as possible.
Yeah, thank you. And your view, Robert?
My view is the following. First, we analyzed our company and we know that our foundations are strong. We know we will weather the storm and we will continue to be a reliable employer, a reliable and safe employer, and strong and solid business partner.
partner. Overall, we are hoping for the best, prepared for the worst, and we are unsurprised by anything in between. In regard of preparedness, we will stay definitely watchful and will not let our guards down. Whatever the politicians are tell us, we will not immediately follow. We follow the guidelines from the person who knows what's going on in New Jersey. This is what we will follow. What is also important, and I would like to put a couple of words on this one, what is the market outlook? Because we as a machine manufacturer, we at the end depend on a growth in wire and cable, and also paired with a positive investment climate to facilitate any investments. So we look at the different eras over the world and make, let's say, a worst case scenario, a best case scenario, and something what is the most probable scenario. So with this, we try to prepare our company what will be the workload the next upcoming years. Everything, of course, everything what is said, we will keep implementing the safety stuff. We will keep implementing the separation. We will keep all our policy in place to be covered also in case something comes back. From the market, we think the US will hopefully rebound to not full potential, but let's say come back to a good extent. Europe might a little be more difficult. China will rebound, but not to the same strength for us as a market as it used to be. So we are, let's say, to some extent positive. We approach this all with a positive attitude. Overall, we would think this crisis can be as severe as the financial crisis. We still, in our estimates, we think it's not as severe as the financial crisis from the business point of view. So this is a little bit, in a couple of words, the outlook, what I see for us as a company. But as everybody mentioned, most important is to stay safe, and we all wait that there's a solution for this pandemic, and a vaccine is found very fast. If not, all what we do is only a tool to flatten the curve, to reduce the risk, but without having immunity and no vaccine, nothing will really be solved.
Thank you very much, Robert. Being that I'm a machine manufacturer myself, I hope your outlook is correct. So,
yes. Again, we are prepared for the worst too, yeah. So,
yeah. All right. As a final question to the panel here, also today here before we take some questions, do you expect any of the provision to remain in place permanently that we have learned through this COVID-19 here?
Yes, I just to what degree I don't know that. And going back to being nimble and adjust and continue to educate ourselves. There's some basic practices. Just the hand sanitizing as an example, as simple as that is, that's not new. That's not new to some of us, right? I mean, we are sensitive to keeping our hands clean, touching our face, or going to our face. That was before this particular COVID-19. That was a best practice with the flu. And so those simple, the social distancing, not coming to work when you have a temperature, there's some basic fundamentals that, to what extent and what the new normal will be exactly, can't tell you that, but there are some best practices that whether we're going through this or anything in the future are just basic, I call them fundamentals that can only add value to you. And if that, the last thing I'll end on this is, if you as an employee don't recognize it, or don't think something's important, we emphasize the fact that it's not for you, for those people that depend on you outside of Southwire. for those coworkers and for those people that depend on you outside, is do it for them, if not for yourself.
Yeah. Do you agree with that, Andy?
I do. Tom brings up a good point. We don't know what we don't know. And I think there will be some changes that we can't anticipate. But I think the future will definitely involve more video conferencing. I know we've put so much effort into it here that we're probably going to do it just so we don't feel like we wasted all that time and effort. But, as we've seen the purchasing agents of some of our customers, younger and younger purchasing agents are less favorable toward the, 2-hour visit and a lunch than there used to be. So we're expecting that they're going to lean more toward remote business and remote contact because it's so efficient. It's not as personal and it's not as old-fashioned. And in some ways, I think we lose some things without a lot of that personal contact. But I think out of respect for health and memory of what we're all going through with this episode, we'll probably see more contact between sales and purchasing people being done by video conference or teleconference. We will probably see perhaps demonstrations and explanations of potential problems in the field or opportunities in the field perhaps being conducted by video conferencing. This will change some things, obviously, and it'll change some things subtly down the road that we just maybe we'll learn to do differently out of efficiency and out of the efficiency that we've learned from going through this. But there will definitely be some changes. We just need to stay nimble and keep in mind that we've gone through this with a lot of effort, a lot of concern, and we want to learn every lesson that we possibly can to keep ourselves and our employees and our customers safe.
Thank you very much. We have a lot of questions here. Do you have anything to add on to this, Robert? You being a machine manufacturer?
I make it very short because to allow some time for questions. Yes, business travel will change. Yes, the frequency will change. But on the other hand, maybe if we replace a phone call with a video conference, we come closer on one side, instead having a video conference instead of a phone call. On the other side, we compensate it by not traveling so much. So yes, I second all what is said. And one part which is mostly affected is maybe business travel down the road.
Thank you very much. And I can see here we have a lot of questions here. So thank you very much for your valuable insights here. And I would start off with the first question that I can see here is very actual. The question was from the audience here. Have any of your employees, either in your facility or another location, tested positive for COVID-19? And if so, what was your protocol for that facility?
So yes, the answer to that is yes. And we have a protocol within our manufacturing plants as far as what those steps are. And so depending, we do an investigation. If it's just a high level, we go through the screening as an example, the temperature check. And if someone is running a temperature, we certainly, they're not in. We encourage them to get tested. And then we do an investigation. If they come back positive, we have them quarantined for 14 days. And if they come back positive, then we do an investigation of who their contact points have been and quarantine those individuals, anybody at risk. And we've been fortunate. We've been fortunate that those employees that have tested positive have been minor in nature. They've all returned to work, and it's been, so that's been a positive. And we feel that given the circumstances, we go to the degree that we do as far as our cleaning and all the other checks, that has led to, even though an employee may test positive, it's other than running maybe a slight fever for a couple of days, and they've all returned to work and nothing serious. But we have a strict protocol, so there's guidelines for the leadership to follow specifically, and I won't go into those details, but that's standardized throughout all of our manufacturing plants. So keep in mind, we're not one location. If you've seen the overview, we have close to 40 different locations throughout North America and the world, and so it's critical to make sure that we're in sync and we follow the standard protocol. And we report out. Again, we have two calls, all leadership throughout North America. We talk twice a day, so we're working in real time, we're communicating in real time, and sharing best practices in real time. So that all ties into minimizing, those positive cases.
Thank you very much, Tom. Another question here, and I will let you answer that, Robert. Social distances is sometimes doing some activities impossible to practice. What measures are taken in such situation, and what PPE are used at Niehoff?
So at our facility, we use gloves, masks, and that is our standard. And of course, we wipe down every surface which is used. So we really try to stick to the 6 foot distance. Only in short periods of time, let's say we have to load specific equipment where 4 hands are needed. But in most cases, we can manage it. We also stretched our office. So people who have to be in the office, they sit now much further apart. And of course, we restricted access to common areas. So we managed it to keep the 6 feet.
Okay. And this is a question for Andy. Have your company implemented a disinfection policy for people entering to your facility? Some companies in my country, I'm not sure where that is, has established a kind of a tunnel where people are spread with an atomized disinfection. And do you think it's necessary? Did you receive some information regarding from CDC? And that was to you, Andy.
We have been keeping up with not only the CDC recommendations, but also all of the different communications that we've received from suppliers, from customers. I'm sure it's been everyone's experience that you've gotten a tremendous number of emails, probably personally and professionally, from people and companies as to their response to the COVID-19 pandemic. With regard to requirements on incoming visitors, suppliers, personnel, we've implemented the lockdown procedure to where they have to check in with someone. When they do enter the building, their temperature is checked. We ask them the questions as prescribed by the CDC. If their temperature is acceptable, then they're allowed access into the building with an escort for only the purposes that they're here for. Obviously, we haven't had anyone with an unacceptable temperature so far, nor have we had any cases at either of our facilities. But our policy is if we do detect a high temperature, then that person, whether an employee or contractor or visitor, is denied access to the building. If it's not an employee, they have to reschedule for another time or another employee. If it is one of our employees, then we have a protocol regarding medical check, validation of their health condition, and a period of quarantine as directed by their doctor that we followed. But as far as a special chamber or tunnel or any kind of atomization, we have not taken that step, nor have we seen many other people that have taken that step. We strictly limited to temperature check, provision of masks and gloves, as well as wipes for use, disinfectant wipes for use on any equipment that the service personnel feel necessary to use.
Thank you very much, Andy. And here's a question, and that's for you, Robert, and that's also kind to my heart here as a machine manufacturer. This is a good question. As a machine manufacturer, has commissioning of machinery come to a remote halt, and also have methods of remotely commissioning machines been looked at via internet?
Okay, so put it this way: from New Jersey, we meanwhile started traveling wherever we can, whatever is in driving distance, and after checking the company that they have proper policies in place. So we started traveling again from New Jersey for urgent services. International, this is to complete stop. I would guesstimate this is still a complete stop, minimum end of June or something like this. We try to commission remotely with web tools, with access to the PLC, with webcams. I still have to see a successful one. We shall see the next couple of weeks how this works out. But again, we do have a good amount of service engineers here locally in the US, which we opened now up for traveling. But of course, this is one of the biggest challenges coming up is the backlog of shipped machines and not commissioned. So this will require that we use all available tools and really work hard to catch up with this backlog of non-commissioned machines.
Thank you, Robert. And I can just add, as president of Encotech, we as a machinery builder as well, we have done remotely upstart all over in the world, but it has been with people that have familiar with our equipment, have prior knowledge and stuff like that. We have been able to do it with the webcam on ours and FaceTime and etc. what is available on the floor. So yeah, it is possible, but I would not like to do it for a complete new customer that it does not know anything about the equipment. That's is troublesome, and we also have a big backlog that we have to address here coming when the years loosen up. And another good question here is that is concerning all of us. Have you found a new use of information technology during COVID pandemic, business planning, simulation, for instance? And I would like to give that question to Tom.
Yeah, nothing other than obviously the utilization of, and I think we're evaluating what those best approaches are, even in the technology world. Is there's WebEx, there's different ways to communicate, and to what Robert just touched on too, the commissioning of new equipment, and those are opportunities because I do feel like we need to be able to work virtual during the commissioning, and I wouldn't say we were best in class in that, and so we have to evaluate what is that. If we have a Niehoff drawing machine and we're going through the commissioning stage, how do we leverage technology to the fullest extent to make sure that we're able to commission that, whether someone's physically in the plant or not, but also then within working from the homes and being sensitive to social distancing, even within the facility, meeting rooms, those conference rooms are not going to be utilized like they were prior to this happening. So how do we leverage technology to again, determine what's best in class in the communication? So I think, Jan, to the question, we recognize we've got to work that and understand that, but we're not best in class yet on that particular area.
Thank you. Here's a quick question to the three of you. If you can just say that, how is each company performing temperature checks for employees to the production facility? And we'll start with you, Andy.
We purchased some infrared, no contact thermometers. Basically, you aim the thermometer at a person's forehead, roughly 18 to 24 inches away. We also make sure that the person checking the temperature has full mask and gloves. when they're checking their temperature. But that's what we utilize. Relatively inexpensive, fairly accurate, and we drew the line at 100 degrees. If anyone had a temperature above 100 or close to it in a couple of cases, we asked them to be rechecked or to go to their doctor.
Thank you. And Robert?
Same here, because might be a small company, you can really still manage it with a simple handheld device, non-contact, where you are, of course, with wearing full mask and gloves. We check all visitors and all employees. So this is a simple device. Because we have not too many employees here, only 34. There are also check-in stations, which are look a little more modern, which automatically then detected. For us, this was not necessary.
Tom?
I mean, similar. We're sensitive to the 6 feet social distancing, and so this is where a conference call twice a day, sharing best practices. You can come up quickly a best practice on how temperature checks are done without putting the oncoming employee or the employee responsible for, or whomever if it's a third party doing the check, not put anybody at risk. So everything is set up to maintain a social distancing. We use the infrared scanners, and every plant was charged with some given guidelines, and then they work what works for them. And because our entrances are different, and so you got to be flexible. But the guidelines are for sure that you keep that social distance. We're using 100.4 as anything over that. Then there's a recheck to make sure that in fact the reading is correct. And so again, it varies, but there are some guiding principles, if you will, just even on the temperature checks that the plants follow.
Thank you. And there's a question here, and this is addressed to you as well, Tom. Has Southwire seen any demand as affected of the COVID-19?
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, so Southwire, if those who are not familiar, we serve many different markets, and so diversity helps in times like these, to where we've seen it all varies depending on which market you're serving. We've seen some impact in some markets, but then in other markets there's been no change whatsoever. And so those areas where we have been impacted by the market, we've made adjustments to work schedules. Again, keeping safety of the employee, empathy, leading by empathy, keeping that number one priority, emphasizing appreciation for those that are coming to work, and then emphasizing for everyone to make sure that they're doing all they can to remain safe. And that's a message our CEO does on a regular weekly basis. There's a video that goes out to all the company, a message that he sends along with other executives with him. And those are common themes, but to answer the question, yes, it depends on the market. So appliance wire, as an example, that goes to appliances that are bought by the consumer, that market certainly been felt. Other markets like that we service, major investor-owned utilities, there's been no change. So it all varies, and that's one of the advantages that we have is we're not one market. We serve the whole entire wiring cable landscape, if you will.
Thank you. And this question I would like to ask you about that, Robert, because that is also pertains to Encotech and our operations. How do you foresee travel with the company employees within our facilities around the world? When do you expect that to loosen up, and what is your policies as a company?
We still monitor this. We do not yet know. I can only guesstimate that international travel will not be possible before sometimes late June or early July. So this is a major problem that we do not have yet timetables available, because we don't know. Number one, it's not yet clear how COVID will develop the next 30 days. This is still a challenge. For now, it would mean if someone travels, let's say, to visit from Germany to the US, it's number one, not possible. Would it be possible? It would mean quarantine in both ways. You arrive 2 weeks quarantine, you fly back another 2 weeks quarantine. That means for one trip, it's 4 weeks at home. That is not something really you can do. We wait for government to give guidance. This is totally necessary, and this is important, and we wait for this. It's for us a big uncertainty.
Okay. And we are almost at our deadline here, and I would like the last question here to come out to the three of you as all. When and how do you plan to return employees from working remotely? And we can start with you, Tom.
Yeah, so we as a company, and of course this is, again, it's fluid because originally it was that Monday after, I guess it would have been the 16th, March 16th was our last day. And we started working remotely on the 17th and said that we're going to work the end of April and we'll return. The temporary deadline was May 4th. Well, then as April unfolded, that May 4th turned into June 1st. So right now, June 1st, and it's going to be a phased-in approach. It's not everybody back on one day. And so we're trying to understand who feels like they need to, they're not as effective as they've been and why that is working remotely, and evaluating what that phased-in approach is going to be in June. Now, 2 weeks from now, that could change to July 1st. But right now, June 1st is when we're planning, and it's going to be a phased-in approach. And, you know, that's the approach. For myself personally, working remotely has been as effective. What has not been is, you know, my regular cadence is visiting manufacturing plants I'm responsible for, and travel being, so we're working a travel policy too. What's that travel protocol moving forward? So June 1st right now, the short answer would be June 1st.
Thank you. And Andy?
We're following basically the local guidelines with regard to reopening up of the general economy. And when we see, as we're starting to, restaurants and other public retail operations return to full capacity, some of them are opening now at limited capacity in the current phase we're in. But when we see them opening to full capacity, then that's basically our signal that we will begin returning employees to work on a phased basis. May not be 5 days a week immediately, but it may be phased in gradually. We're pretty much tentative on when that date is because, as Tom pointed out, you know, the dates have fluctuated and been extended that the government and the medical authorities have used. We've seen, for example, the automotive companies talk about returning to work on April 30th. That moved to May 4th. We see May 11th and May 18th, and some of all the above have taken place. So the short answer is we're watching it, and we'll make a more definite decision on that as we get closer to the end of May.
You have the final word, Robert.
Okay, for us here in New Jersey, Niehoff Endex, we made not yet a decision when to move back the remaining home offices. It's simply there's no need. They work efficient, so that is not a concern. And number two, I don't like the numbers in New Jersey when it comes to COVID-19. So I wait. I don't need a lot because we are, again, small. I can act on a short notice. So there's no need to make now a early decision. So we continue to stay in home office wherever possible.
Thank you very much, Robert. And that ends today's seminar here. And I would like to thank Tom Heberling, Andy Talbot, and Robert Wild for attending the panel today. And also there is a special thanks to the staff of WAI for their tremendous work in setting this here up. so we could provide you with the follow-up and the good protocol to how to deal with COVID-19 and the impact that it has had on our industry. And on behalf of the Wire Association International, I would like to thank you all for attending this webinar, and we will alert you in the future webinars is available. And if you have not seen our WAI Hardwired training series, do so by visiting the Wire Association YouTube channel and search for WAI Hardwired. That brings WAI's presentation to an end. Thank you so much for joining in. Stay safe and healthy out there. We will get through this. Thank you.